This video contains spoilers for Tangled Before Ever After. You know, with all the movies that get turned into TV series or even sequels, you get a big sense of it's just a cash grab. This sort of thing was really popular when we had all those direct-to-DVD Disney movies. You had all these just ridiculously low budget, and 9 times out of 10 would be just an awful movie. You'd have that presented to you and it would just be marketed randomly. Occasionally you get a TV series out there. You get like things like Aladdin, the TV series. You get things like Tailspin, which had Jungle Book characters for no apparent reason. So, there's this kind of bias going into these things. It's kind of like how people are looking at things like Wreck-It Ralph 2 or Frozen 2, where you have these doubts because of the track record Disney has, even though you know that the modern Disney is very different from back then. There's a lot more emphasis put on when you make something good, it usually brings in money. That's kind of been proven by this recent trend of like animated movies from Disney especially. So seeing a TV series based off this, you kind of go in with that same doubt that you have from previous TV series. Like, it's not to say those ones are bad. Like, I remember watching Lilo and Stitch, the series, but when you compare it to like really good entertainment, it's not the best out there. Like, it may have been okay or decent or passable or even good, but you're not gonna go back to it at the end of the day and rewatch it over and over again. It's not one of those. It's not one of those when you usually think about that. So when I heard that there's gonna be a Big Hero 6 TV series and a Tangled TV series, there were doubts. There are always gonna be doubts until I'm proven wrong. This is gonna persist until 2018, and if Wreck-It Ralph 2 is really good, then I think all my doubts are gonna be erased. But this is a really good sign. This is a really good sign that there's going to be a lot of effort and thought put into a movie version of just these movies, these TV series. Because Tangled is not a movie I would have expected a TV series to come out of, yet I am really, this won me over. This kind of came as a surprise, because going in I was kind of expecting, I don't know what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting anything groundbreaking, because I can't really explain it. Like, I think it's still that bias to Disney Channel. Just that combined with that, the track record of Disney sequels and Disney TV series. Disney Channel is not known for the best cartoons until very recently. Like, they've had hits in the past, like Kim Possible and Phineas and Ferb, but it wasn't until recently that they started churning out really good content on a regular basis, because we got things like Wander Over Yonder, we got things like Gravity Falls and Star vs. the Forces of Evil, which are all really good series, and they're given a lot of creative liberty. They're given a lot of freedom to do whatever they want with what they have, and because of that, I think that's translating over into this TV series, along with how do I put this? I was not expecting a movie, a TV show based off one of Disney's biggest, movies, to be given as much freedom as it was here. I was expecting it to be, paint by numbers, to be safe, to make sure that it doesn't tarnish the brand at all. But no, they took risks that pay off with this. This is actually more mature than I was expecting. I was expecting, I don't know, when you look at programming on Disney Channel especially, because those cartoons I mentioned earlier all kind of migrate to Disney XD. That's kind of where they leave their TV shows, but this really grabbed me because they're given a lot of freedom. They set up arcs. It's mature. It actually treats its audience with respect, and I'm kind of upset that I doubted this. It's the same channel that gave me those 3 cartoons and more. I know a lot of people like to look at Nick and Cartoon Network, but there's a reason why Disney has stayed in the game as long as it has. And they're, especially recently, they've started to really step up their game to compete, because 10 years ago when you had like that, when you had that, I don't know what, the like the golden age of television cartoons where you have all those like Cartoon Network originals, all those Nickelodeon shows that were really good. You don't really include Disney there, but Disney's kind of getting that finally. They're finally getting this output of really good content, and I'm happy to say this. This was good enough that I bought it. That I bought more than just this simple movie because it really grabbed me. It really grabs your attention. You want to be there. You want to be sitting around with it. Because it feels open. There's multiple reasons why I can like this. There's mystery involved. There's just good characters. It's good on so many levels, and it honestly, watching it makes me kind of mad at the marketing, because in the marketing for the movie, they made a big deal of hair. That was like gonna be the crutch the series needed to stand on its own. And you know what? If they removed the hair aspect, I would have still liked this as much as I do. But because they add that hair element, it's not just like crammed in there so they can sell toys or anything. That's probably gonna come out of this, but it feels naturally woven in. There's a reason given to it. There's actually some interesting lore and allusions here. The way the hair comes back, and that kind of relates to something I'll talk about later with like flowers, because a flower will grow back. When you cut the flower off, it will grow back, and it's not a physical flower. It's kind of like, I'll get to that eventually, but this movie really won me over. And if you haven't seen it yet and you're thinking of watching it, pause this and go and watch it, because you know what? It's worth it. Even if you're not going to get into it, I think it's a good thing to see. It's a nice follow-up to the movie. They actually go out of their way to make sure it feels like it's in the same world. And honestly, I'm happy they went with the animation they did, because then we don't get some uncanny looking CGI that's trying to imitate the movie, because that would never work. By the way, before I get into things, the animation in this is breathtaking. I like the backgrounds, like the style. The only flaw I can find is that they maybe move a bit too much. Like, there's like almost constant movement in this show, but you know, hey, like, if that's the biggest complaint I can find, and even then it's very subtle at sometimes, like you get used to it really quickly. That's saying a lot about this. And you know, it won me over on so many levels that I'm just gonna start talking about it. It's what's good, what's bad. It's really honestly worth a watch, and I'm actually interested to see where it goes. So this entire thing begins with a really clever reference to the movie, which, like, it kind of sets the tone. You get that similar tone to the original Tangled movie, right off the bat, which is kind of why, like, the first opening scene with the horse riding feels a bit jarring, because you get into that. It feels almost exactly like Tangled, like the beginning where he's like, this is the story of how I died, and he goes into a narration. But this is, it gets you in that mood, and then you're kind of jarred by this sudden, very different take on things. So yeah, like, the first scene felt a bit jarring to me, and I was kind of like, I'm not sure, I'm kind of not into this, but like the moment that ends and they kind of show the title, you're into it. Like, the moment, like, they suck you in, the characters are that good, it's just, you want to be there. It's just that first scene was a little odd for some reason. I don't know why. I think that's why it would feel so jarring, but don't hold me on that. It might be it was just paced poorly. I'm not totally an expert on this yet, so what can I say? Honestly, one of the weird things that won me over right away was the humor they used, and I wasn't quite expecting that, because they didn't really market this as comedy. They like had a couple jokes, but I wasn't expecting as many laughs I got here. And it's not like they're shoving like a joke a minute at you. No, the jokes like get proper build off, they have proper pacing, they have proper payoff. It's just, yeah, like, the humor here actually works, and I'm happy about that, because it feels very similar to the movie's humor. Like, I think that's the best thing I can compare this to, like, if you like the movie, you'll like this because it's really good. I actually feel like a lot of current Disney exports, not Pixar, don't look over there because that's very different tone wise, but if you look at current Disney Channel and Disney just animation studios, you'll get that vibe from it, and I think that's very appropriate. I'm happy they actually were able to recreate that, because if they weren't, that was one of the big concerns I had, was that they wouldn't be able to, like, it would feel like it didn't need to be Tangled. It doesn't feel like they just added the Tangled trademark on here just to get people to watch. No, it feels like someone took Tangled and say, hey, I can expand on that. So they did, and it works very well. We got a couple good songs in here, and although because this is a movie, I'm wondering if we're going to get like songs throughout the show, because I would like songs throughout the show, kind of like at the rate like Steven Universe delivers them, because Tangled was a musical. So I feel like if you take like the pacing Steven Universe does, heck, even more would be welcome. I don't think they should go Phineas and Ferb amount of songs, but I felt like the fact that they had 2 songs and then a reprise here was good. Maybe one every few episodes, and maybe even do a musical episode like Steven Universe did. I would love to see that, because these are 22-minute episodes, which means I have more time for that, which means the song doesn't take up as much time, which means they have the ability to explore a bit more with that. Like, the one issue with songs in Steven Universe is they have to always tie into the plot, which on one hand is really nice, but on the other hand you don't get as much freedom with music. So I feel like this is like the perfect way to, this is going to be a perfect opportunity to just like make some nice musical moments, and I hope they continue with like the quality they had here, because I wanted to rate both songs, but both of them really won me over, because they, like, when you start getting bored of the first one, like After Ever After, it's yeah, you just Life After Happily Ever After, like, you start to get bored of it a little bit, and then it hits its stride. Like, it's paced perfectly, this song, and yeah, music is something I really look forward to in this. I want to see what they can do with it, especially with the way they have the original voice actors and they can sing. So, yeah, like right off the bat, I do have a couple questions about this. Like, there's a couple of nitpicks, kind of like the coronation for a princess. I'm wondering if that's trying to cash in on the coronation from Frozen in a way, like not in the way like it's a big, not in the way like we're promoting someone up, but if you remember the first part of Frozen, like seeing all these, like having an excuse for something fancy to happen, because that's honestly one of my favorite scenes in Frozen, is the entire like ball scene, because it's, I kind of like when characters have a conversation in a busy room but no one notices it. Kind of like think like True Lies or anything like that. Like, that's one of my favorite tropes, and I don't feel like it's used very much. We don't really get that here. It's more just like an excuse to have someone come into the castle in disguise, and it all ties together nicely. Although I'm like questioning, do you coronate princesses in real life? Because this is actually surprisingly historically accurate. Like, the way they're in a castle, not a palace. It's very specific, because that's where you keep criminals, is in a castle. A castle is a fortress. Although someone may live there, a castle is still a fortress. It's a place to house an army. That's why, like, in the original, they took Flynn to the castle, and then they had they have so many guards around. It's because that is a place of war, even though there is like a palace section to it. So, like, you even see like all these guards around. There's a reason they're there. It's a castle. Castles aren't meant to be palaces, even though they're used like that in fantasy a lot. I like the way they incorporate that into this movie. Yeah, like, I felt like there were a couple like inaccuracies here. Like, I had a few questions, like, isn't royalty like forced into military service. Like that's something they have to do. So I was wondering when the king was getting captured, I'm like, isn't he a soldier? Like, isn't he trained as that? But then I thought, maybe not, because you look at some of the royalty in history books, and they are not exactly military types. They're not built for that at all. Yeah, like, actually, speaking of the parents, the king and queen actually get voices here. I think, and it's honestly, their voices are very nice. The king has a very strong, kind of awesome voice. And he gets a lot of emotion out of it. Like, if you remember in the movie, they got a lot of emotion out of their faces. These two voice actors get a lot of emotion out of their voices. Like, you can tell exactly what they're thinking, what they're like, just by their voice. So they picked very good voice actors for non-speaking roles in the movie, which is kind of hard to fill in when you have something that, like, people will just imagine something in that place. It's like, that's why when TV series run for long enough, or they have a mystery, people will start to get disappointed towards the end because it's not going the way they wanted. So to be able to actually impress me with this is very nice, because we've had literally 7 years since Tangled. Tangled was out, although not exact, but it's around that number. I do have a couple questions about Corona though, like the giant wall, which I don't think was in the movie, but they added a giant fantasy wall that is covered in logos, so, you know, whatever. I don't really get what it's keeping out, but that might be explored. It might just be a border wall of the kingdom. Who knows? Like, honestly, I thought Corona was right near the ocean, so I was kind of like, a wall is kind of pointless because you'll have people coming in by sea. Like, having a fortified, that city that the castle's in looks like a fortified city. Like, that would look like a place where you'd have walls. This isn't quite like, although actually, it's very much flatlands. Like, to compare it to, like, Frozen, where they have all this natural mountain around them, so they're actually protected by that. It actually kind of makes sense to have a wall around, so they'll probably, I hope it's kind of just like an offhand explanation instead of something just like stupid, like there's an army of ogres out there or something, or even then, like, maybe a warring kingdom or something. It didn't seem like they were in immediate danger of invasion, although they have a lot of soldiers, so who knows. We're kind of limited on our modern Disney, like, fantasy, like, kingdoms, because, like, when you look at them, you have your 2D ones, but then when you get to the 3D ones, we actually only have 2, even though we've had 4 princesses in CGI. But who knows? Like, honestly, the most I can compare this to is Frozen, and they're very different kingdoms, so who knows. Yeah, after all this time, Flynn's gotten really used to the castle. Well, Eugene, they call him Eugene in this, and either or, they're kind of interchangeable, the same character, so who cares. But he's kind of become really used to this, and he's getting, like, manicures and stuff, so you get these wonderfully Eugene scenes, the way I can describe it, because you can totally picture the character from the movie doing this sort of stuff, so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. You're not freaked out by it or anything. It really works. And yeah, like, actually, like, all the characters really work here, and they have really good chemistry. Like, when these characters talk, you actually believe they're in, like, relationships, or they're friends, or they're enemies, or anything like that. Especially Eugene and Rapunzel. That is one I'm happy they got really right, because it really works. Like, you actually feel like they care for one another. It's not just they're a couple because they're a couple. You can tell why they like each other. There's actual romance there, which is rare. I actually like this because often the common, like, criticism of Disney, like, in the past, was they don't build relationships. Here, you believe they're building a relationship. You believe they're in a relationship. You believe they're taking time with this relationship, and it really works really well. And I'm really happy to say that. just a bunch of good scenes with this. You get a couple of new characters, like you get Rapunzel's handmaiden, who has a really terrible nickname for her that I hope just dies out. That feels like, when calling her Raps, that feels like something that's gonna fizzle out over time and not be mentioned in the future. You see it happen in shows all the time. They'll start like a running gag or anything, and it will just be dropped or forgotten because new writers come in, or they get used to it and they don't feel like they need these crutches to appeal to the audience anymore. So, like, yeah, that was one of the few things that annoyed me in the show. But I like this handmaiden character, although I'm questioning why a servant person would be allowed to have enough weapons to commit regicide just within grasp. That was kind of confusing, but hey, I guess she's on our side, and she has an animal sidekick. A couple more Disney cliches in there, just added in just for no apparent reason, just to be there, I guess. Building this up, building up the hair was actually was what probably won me over to this more than anything. Like, I liked, when Rapunzel, they showcase her fear of being entrapment with, like, a near panic attack. She nearly has I think she did, like, everything starts turning gray around her. I'm like, oh wow, this is really an adult message to teach people that, you know, you shouldn't let anyone force you into anything. And I feel like for kids watching this is a show that will make them smarter and more aware of that. I actually like how they're showing this. Like, I don't know where they're gonna go with it. I hope they continue that, like, show her having, like, these, like, entrapped moments. Like, I don't know what triggered it. I think it was the fear of entrapment, but, like, you actually felt like she had a panic attack there. Another moment like this was when the king has an audio flashback of his daughter being stolen, and he gets motivation in one scene. They don't need to just explain this over and over again, why he's, like, being the grumpy, oh, I'm just gonna lock you up because I'm the father character. No, it's a very believable reason, and you understand why these characters are here. And of all the shows to avoid cliches like this, I'm surprised it's this one. I'm really happy they had this movie to flesh things out, this entire, like, hour. You get all these motivations, you got all this character development. I have no complaints about any of the characters in here, except the villains, but more on that later, because in the first half of the episode, they really build them up as this intimidating threat. And you actually believe it, because they look like crooks. They have a leader who, like, burns a parchment, so I'm like, is that, like, magic powers? Because that's not out of the question. This takes place in the same world as Frozen, so in this world there are magic flowers that can be passed down genetically. There's magic ice powers, there's talking snowmen and rock things, plus anything else they want to explore in here, because these two worlds are connected. So there's a lot of, like, options for magic and monsters and fantasy creatures here. They're not, like, bound by our reality, which really excites me. I actually like that. If you, like, look at Frozen and this, you can say, well, this is a world where magic is uncommon enough to be, like, shocked by at first, but not so uncommon that people won't get used to it. So, like, I thought maybe this is a magic user or something, but that didn't come to fruition. But yeah, those villains were built up in the first half of this episode, but what really gets this plot rolling, because before this, we had all that character setup where you get all this character development. So before the hair grew back, like, I almost forgot the hair has to come back, because I was so invested in this whole Flynn's trying to propose. You have everyone's trying to get used to everyone else, because Rapunzel's been gone all these years. Like, this is only 6 months later, so there's this awkwardness where they're playing off her naivety by just, like, not making it awkward. Like, it's a little awkward, but they're not playing it off her laughs. It's actual awkwardness. You actually get a feeling, yeah, she's not used to this. So you have all this good setup, and then I was reminded the hair has to come back. So they leave the walls of Corona, and I'm kind of sitting there like, okay, is this going to be a crutch now? Are we going to be completely reliant on the magic hair? Is this going to be all this is going to be from now on? And thankfully it isn't. They actually establish a mystery after showing like off this like all these beautiful backgrounds and these beautiful sets and locations that we'll probably go back to eventually, or they'll be recycled in one way or the other. And they go to the cliff where the flower was found. And there's like these spikes sticking out of the ground. But when Rapunzel touches it, her hair starts like glowing blonde, so they try to run away and her hair comes back while these spikes are following her. Now what these spikes reminded me of is when I thought like, I don't know how I came to this conclusion, but something reminded me that the magic flower, I'm like, well, flowers sometimes have thorns on them. They have thorns, they have defensive mechanisms to protect the flower, to protect what gives life. So I'm thinking there's a lot more of a connection here. There's like this symbolic connection if these are meant to be the thorns, so the other side of the magic flower, and she's the good side, she's the beautiful side, the part that smells good, the part that, like, you know how a flower is, but she has all these benefits and these good things from the flower. Meanwhile, this cliff side has all these like unbreakable thorns on it. And these thorns are aggressive and they're trying to follow her because who knows why. And they escape this, but like that was what really piqued my interest. I'm like, okay, why did the hair come back now? Like now I'm actually interested in it. It's actually a plot point. It's actually going to be another layer on this, because when they go back to the castle with the hair, it's still the same show it was earlier, except now the hair element's added in. So instead of replacing all this with this new element, they're actually adding it in, and that's how it should be done. It doesn't feel pandering, it doesn't feel cliche, and the show doesn't feel like it would be any different without this hair. So I was really happy to see that, and they're doing this whole thing where they're keeping it secret. I'm like, okay, how long is this gimmick gonna keep going on? It ends by the end of the episode. And like, I hate trying to hide, like, you know, the cliche, trying to hide the alien or hide the pet or hide the big mysterious power. No, it's out there in the open. And I guess her hair got upgraded because it can't be cut now, which is kind of the way once again a plant when it's hurt, like for example, I have a jade plant. When you start trimming the jade plant, it stops growing as many leaves because it feels like it's under attack, so it starts thickening its trunk. So it grows in a different way, and it tries to make up for this, because like when you start trimming it, it thinks that it's too heavy, so it needs to grow the trunk now. Now that the trunk's bigger, it can start growing all its leaves again. It can start growing way more branches, and then it'll get top heavy again, then you trim it again, and it can go back to that. So plants actually adapt to a situation, so I'm thinking that her hair is acting a similar way. It has a very big plant motif, so in this way, the hair is actually adapting, so if it were to be destroyed again and come back again, it would be immune to whatever destroyed it last time. So like, I guess if you took like a flamethrower to her or something, I don't know. Who knows what else of Rapunzel's magic? Does she have magic blood? Does she have magic like saliva? Does she have magic? We all know she has magic tears, so all that's left is for her to summon a shield and lead a rebellion, then she can be Rose Quartz. But bad joke. No, like, the moment the hair comes back, they're trying to hide it, and they hide it in a very clever way, because earlier they introduced this character who has like this big wig, so the parents think that Rapunzel's just trying to fit in too well, which harbors back to the awkwardness earlier, which means these writers are clever enough to take stuff that happens later and tie it back to the first part to find a motivation for it. And it works so well, and I'm so happy they do that, because what does this mean for the show? Like, the continuity in this episode was so good, so what did they set up here that I wasn't aware of? That was just a subtle statement or random nod. Who knows? Like, all sorts of things can happen with this, and it gives you a very good running plot vibe. Like, kind of in the way, what's a good comparison? I don't think it's gonna go in waves like Star vs. Forces of Evil, where like the plot's like plot episode, not episode, plot episode, not episode. I feel like it's gonna maybe it's either gonna be timed like Gravity Falls or Steven Universe, or maybe even like something like an Adventure Time miniseries. They're gonna be episodes that are just world building, because I feel like they're gonna use this to expand the world and explore ideas to see what works or not for what they're planning to do with like the Frozen movie, because it comes in the same world. So if something goes over well with audiences here, where they can be more experimental, it will probably go over well with movie-going audiences, who will probably accept it more easily. So, not saying like we're gonna see things from Frozen in this, but I feel like elements you see brought up here, subtle or not, maybe like certain styles of dress, certain styles of the way courtly manner is conducted and how the audience reacts to that. You may see elements of that transfer over into this Frozen sequel, which is probably going to be a lot more studio handled, but even then, that movie apparently got a lot of creative freedom, so I don't know what they're going to do with this. They might not be connected at all, and that was just a random, that was a random Easter egg, for all we know. But because they use the same animation style, and heck, Rapunzel has the same models as Elsa and Anna, you have to wonder. You really have to wonder, what the connection is there. But, yeah, I could talk all day about that. I might just make a video about that one day, just, how much are these going to connect. But I want to see more of the series before I make any connection for that, because I feel like inserting something blatantly Frozen into this would distract from a scene. Imagine if you're just looking at a crowd shot and then you suddenly spot something. That's going to distract you for the rest of the show. So I feel like keeping it subtle, keeping it disconnected is actually the smart way to do this. As much as I'd like to see something like that, but hey, what can I say? But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, this is kind of near the end of the episode, because everything had been so good so far, and maybe because I've been watching Samurai Jack recently, when the villains came in, it didn't feel as good. But to be honest, it felt a lot more pandering when he got, the frying pan. The action wasn't very good. The villains break out in a clever way, but really no one notices that one guy is a criminal. The one guy who has, the really long hair, if I saw that guy, I'd think he's, a psycho, a serial killer or something, because if you look at his face, it's just, he has, perfectly clean teeth, but he has, a really long face. You know how in the movie they really stylized their characters? It's the same thing here, but he's made to look evil, so... the action there was a bit clunky, and it kind of ended just, how would I explain it? It just didn't end in a nice way. It just kind of bookend, she gets crushed by a door, and it was funny. It was funny for the episode, but I thought these were going to be arc villains. No, not really, but at the same time, as much as I like recurring villains, these might be more akin to the space bikers from My Life as a Teenage Robot or something, where they pop up every once in a while, then eventually get a bigger role. Those characters, I remember after the cluster was defeated in that show, they popped up in, I think it was 3 or 4 times in season 3. They took over as the main recurring antagonist. So who knows, they might do something like that. They might just never show up again. But I feel on a second watch, when I'm not expecting so much, because this really built my expectations up, I feel I'll accept that more. That feels like an element that was just me as a hyped person just getting really into that. I kind of noticed the king doesn't like magic very much, so he apparently locks anyone with that up or anything, so I feel magic's gonna play a bigger role in this than I initially thought. There are gonna be other sources of it, so I'm kind of excited. This actually had me really excited, because they actually do royalty stuff. It's kind of in that same vein as Frozen, where you actually see, hey look, someone's getting coronated. Or if you read any Frozen novels where people are doing actual royal stuff, or you read any Tangled novels and they do the same thing. So, seeing the everyday workings of the kingdom really gives you a sense of where they're living, especially since you're stuck here. I feel like they should expand upon that more, have a few more things like that, and yeah, overall, I can't recommend this enough. I really can't, because, everything from, like, Eugene at the kiddie table to the fact that to the fact that the hair grows back and actually plays a role. It's gonna actually have a point in the series besides just being the hair. I can't recommend this enough. It feels like it's gonna be kind of episodic with an overarching plot, like something like Steven Universe or Gravity Falls, until like the plot actually picks up. So I feel like this is gonna be a show with season finales. I don't feel like this is gonna be like what's an example? Like if you watch My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, the pilot to that is like kind of like this, where it has like a big villain and all that, but then it becomes episodic after that. I don't feel like it's gonna be like that. I feel like it's gonna be a lot more. It's gonna be a lot more plot heavy than that, but not as much as. Well, who knows? We'll see what happens. But if you've seen it, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. I may go watch the next episode and try to get a video out, because this won me over. And, good on it. I'm happy about that. So, see ya. Bye.